Right. Well, I'm glad you're here. Jonathan Lost from the Cartography Society. Now, we've been sent a rather cryptic message from one of our field operatives. Now, I have it here, and I was hoping that you might help me to interpret what it says. I'm afraid it's very faint. I can barely read it, and it appears to be in code of some kind, sort of written upside down and backwards, I suppose. But well, I suppose this is your area of expertise, really. I'm more of a map person myself, but I mean, if you look at it, it's completely blank, actually. Oh, no, here it is on the side. Right, the king is ill, golden goose cooked. All right, so it's some sort of culinary message, I suppose. Send Patudi at once. Can't say I'm familiar with anyone named Patudi. All is lost. Oh, that's unfortunate. I'll get the insurance claims ready. Remember the 5 fingers. Not sure what that means, actually. Another problem with these secret messages is they're pretty damned secret. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of How to Be a Great GM. My name is Guy and today we're talking secret messages. Secret messages. This was recommended to me by someone who sent us an email at geekstable@gmail.com. Geekstable@gmail.com. They sent me an email saying, hey, are you aware that there are these things called secret messages? I was like, no, I wasn't aware of it. It's a secret. Anyway, enough of those bad jokes. I promise that's the last one for today. Nonetheless, secret messages. There's all sorts of implications with secret messages, and they make a game session that much more entertaining. And it also depends on how far you're willing to go and what kind of players you have. So there's some tricky things we need to just take into account when designing secret messages for our world. We're going to look at real world secret messages, what was done in the real world, what is done in the real world, how have we sent secret messages in the past and in the present. Fantasy world, how would those secret messages be changed based on a fantasy world setting, and then the game world. So around the actual table, how does this change how secret messages should work? All of that coming up now. As a matter of fact, let's jump into the real world. What has been done in the real world? Let me get out of the way. Look at me taking up all this acreage here. So let's look. Floriography. I love it. Absolutely love it. I didn't know what it was until, again, this person who sent me the email said, hey, we do all this kind of stuff. It's cool. So let's go. Let me slow down. All right. Invisible inks. Invisible inks have been around for a long time. We know that the Romans used them. Cicero used to titillate his lovers by writing secret letters in milk. In milk, of all things. You write in milk, and as it sours, it slowly becomes visible, or again, you heat the page and it becomes visible. Now, interestingly enough, if you ever want to screw over a friend of yours, perhaps they come around for role-playing and they are just a complete and utter diva, write in milk on their car. They won't see it because milk becomes transparent under small amounts, so just write in milk on the hood of the car. You can write whatever message you like, and they won't notice, and they'll leave their car in the sun. The milk will sour, it turns into lactic acid, and that acid will eat through the coating of the paint on their car, leaving them a wonderful message that they can remember you with or buy for many, many months to come until they pay for a repaint. So milk is not just a secret message, it's a secret weapon. All right. Okay, so lemon juice was a common one that was used for a long time until everyone realized that, hey, if I hold the letter up over an open flame, it reveals lemon juice. It is something that you can do at home, of course. You grab that lemon juice out of the fridge that you use on your pancakes on a Sunday morning. Anyway, grab that lemon juice, write out in it. Don't use a pen to write out in the lemon juice because that just won't work. So, you can get a stick or an earbud or something. Just write very broadly because you won't see what you're writing either. Lemon juice is a common one. Milk is another one. Ultraviolet paint is one that you have access to today in the modern times. We've got ultraviolet lights. When you shine a blue light onto it, you can suddenly read through it. That one's quite popular as well. So there are a lot of invisible inks out there. Floriography, which is my new favourite type of secret messaging, was developed during the Victorian period when, of course, no one wanted to talk to anybody about their emotions. So they did it through flowers. Flowers. The lily, let us regard the lily. The lily represented you are a good friend. It's the ultimate friend zone flower. So if you were courting a young maiden and you sent her a bunch of roses, which means love, and she sent you back a bunch of lilies, you've been friend zoned. Florally friend zoned. Oh dear. Well, the inner botanist in me is going, oh, that's so exciting. They use carnations to represent you are a very curious person and I love it. There's all kinds of codes and things that came about. Now, the unfortunate thing was that during the height of floriography, there were multiple books published that had contradicting messages, causing the entire floral coded message industry to collapse when people started to send the wrong types of flowers and completely ball up the entire message process. Perfumery. Perfumery is another one. Scents. Now, this wasn't too common in terms of what type of secret message you were sending, and sometimes it wasn't a secret message, it was an overt message. If you could afford perfume, you were a noble hobnob. If you couldn't, well, then you were just like the rest of us, smelly and unwashed. So perfume was an important signifier of status, but in a world where you have individuals that have got a heightened sense of smells, scents could suddenly become important because they start to act like pheromones, don't they? So pheromones and scents allow us to have a secret code that maybe we're not even aware of. Chromatic information. So in other words, beads, colors. In Africa, my home continent, beads have a huge amount of information that can be contained within them. So a simple necklace, which just looks like a random collection of colors, is in actual fact a coded message saying that the person is perhaps married or unmarried, has multiple children, has a giant dowry available to them. All those kinds of things get passed through in chromatic secret messages. So beads, colors, war paint, those kinds of things. Lots of interesting little ways in which we've communicated. Then the more interesting ones, knots. Knots, the kupu of the Indies and the Incas of South America. They had a written system that involved knots. The length of the string in between the knot and the type of knot indicated certain things. String them together and you get an entire encyclopedia or a book or a message saying it is not raining today. Get it? No, never mind. Okay, never mind. Nonetheless, knots. Knots were a huge secret message. Courtesy of the LGBTI movement, when lesbians and gays were persecuted, handkerchiefs were a major form of secret code. And depending on what handkerchief you had in your back pocket, depended on what type of individual you were within those communities. Very, very interesting to see all the different types of handkerchiefs. And it got to the point where I suppose you'd be looking at someone's back pocket and you'd go, you've got 14 different handkerchiefs. Just what kind of person are you? You're my kind of person. That's what you are. And then pottery. A simple pot with a certain type of decoration would only be used for a certain type of guest. If I use the pottery that's got the zigzags on it, it means please drink up and leave quickly. If I use another type of pottery that's got straight lines on it, it means you're welcome to stay. And there are so many more things that were used. Another one which I particularly liked, I didn't put it on the list because this is a pretty extensive list and it's not a history lesson on secret messages much. The other one that I particularly liked was to write the message on the person's scalp. And then you let the hair grow back. Well, you have to shave it off first so you can write the message. You could write it, I suppose, without shaving the hair off, but you run the risk of misspelling and, your lines won't be straight and it just look unprofessional. So you shave the person's head off. You then write in a semi-permanent ink, not too permanent, but semi-permanent ink. You write your message on the person's head. Then you wait for 3 months for the hair to grow back. So you've got to find a fast grower, someone who's got hair, they just kind of just bushy and they're just hairy all over the place. So you find the hairiest friend that you have, shave them, write your messages on, let their hair grow back. Then you send them to the person who's supposed to receive this message, bearing in mind it is 3 months later. So that message you write better not be, hurry, come quick. Anyway, then you arrive at said person and the first thing you say to them is, hi, please shave me. It's the greatest pickup line in the world, I think. So you get shaved, you get read the message, and the person goes, is there a response? Because if there is, wash my head quickly and let's write it, and I'll stay here for 3 months before I leave again. Okay, so maybe not the greatest of secret method techniques out there, but certainly one that's pretty ingenious. Now, what does all of this mean for us as game masters when we come to running our game? I'm going to try and wheel back. I'm at a friend's house here in the US. I'm loving it. The carpet is so rich, but the chair doesn't like wheeling on it. Now, fantasy worlds. Let's look at what messaging we could incorporate into fantasy worlds. Because we're playing in a fantasy game, just transposing what we have on Earth into our fantasy game, I think is perhaps a little lazy. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes you go, well, humans will be humans and they'll use all the stuff that humans invented. For sure, I agree. But what happens when you have a tail? Or horns, or wings, or scales? Suddenly your entire anatomy can be used. Now, George Lucas did this, whether it was George Lucas or one of the authors who wrote about George Lucas's universe did it. I'm not entirely sure, so let me know down below if you do know. The Twi'leks, which had those two long tentacle thingies, the Leku, as they are called. The Twi'leks apparently have a secret code as to how those move indicate certain things. The Andorians from Star Trek Enterprise, once they had miniaturized the mechanics, the little antenna could move. So there's lots of ways in which the anatomy of the race can now be used in terms of sending secret messages. If you have a tail, if your tail has got 3 rings on it, it means something. If your tail has got 6 rings on it, it means something else. If the rings are different color, so there's lots of different ways in which the anatomy could be used that we as human beings just don't have. Then if you look at the racial tendencies, now I'm not, I'm very aware, let's put it this way, that the dwarves are not all the same. There are some dwarves that live below ground, there are some that live above ground, but we are talking about broad stroke racial tendencies. So let's say, for example, the dwarves. Dwarves are associated with stone, so maybe stone arrangements, maybe Khans have special meaning for dwarves that other races wouldn't pick up. So when you receive a package from a dwarf and it's just 7 core rock samples in a specific sequence, you might not know what it means. But another dwarf might go, schist, coal, malachite, granite. Do you know what this means? Right, you get the point. So stone arrangements could be something. Spider webs. What about spider webs? What about using spider webs? Spider webs could be so cool. Imagine there's this person who bumps into you and suddenly there's a spider web and you're going, oh my God, get it off of me. Meanwhile, it's a coded message woven into the spider web because it was a drow who sent the message. That could be pretty cool. And you hold up the spider web, or perhaps you take it a step further. A drow sends you a little box, and inside of that box is a very angry spider. You place the box in a corner of the room, and the spider weaves out its spider web, which contains the secret message in the spider web. So once it's finished, you knock out the spider web, and then you have to kill the spider because the poor little thing has been programmed to write your specific message in the cobweb. So it would just build another cobweb and just write the message again a couple of weeks later after you've left, and then suddenly it's no longer secret. But nonetheless, the sacrifice of a few little spiders, I think, is worth it for the secret message to be transferred. Certainly, maybe, well, maybe not ethical, and maybe the rights of spiders are being violated, but they drow, they don't care. How is magic going to affect your secret world? Now, we already know that there are a lot of spells in Dungeons and Dragons, for example. There's the wizard mark, which is invisible to all except those that have been allowed to see it. When you look at the Lord of the Rings, and you've got the entranceway into Khazad Dûm, and the gates are all nice and shut, except for the elvish inlay. When the moon shines through the page on a certain day, you get to see the map. So all of this kind of stuff, all the magic that you have, whether it's magic or whether it's science fiction, perhaps it's actually the planet the planet has a gravitational pulse cannon on it, which shifts its gravity. So the entire gravimetric scan of the entire region has this minor fluctuation like Morse code. You could go that extreme, for example. So yes, magic spells is certainly going to determine some other options for you. So then we've got cons, which we spoke about. We've got shaved heads, which we spoke about. Teeth, the teeth of different animals and different sequences. I could see the lizard folk perhaps using that, or a more tribal group using that, where there are multiple different teeth on a piece of string, similar to the kupu. So there are ways and means of looking at what we have in real world and translating that into the fantasy environment by applying these sort of criteria, the anatomy of the creature that is using it, the racial tendencies and traits that they have, as well as magic, putting that together. Now, when it comes to our game itself, what do you need to do as the game master to bring this to life? Do you need to do handouts? Do you need to spend half of your morning dripping paper into black tea so that it looks old and wrinkled, and then writing on it with lemon juice the secret message? You certainly can do that. There is no reason why you can't. Do you take ultraviolet light and inscribe it on the little door panels of the miniatures that you're using in your game? Or do you create little shadow puppets that the characters have to hold up over a torch so that it shines on the ceiling to reveal a message? Absolutely, you can do that. Do you need to do that? No, you don't. This is theater of the mind, just the same way as you don't have to hit your players with a bastard sword every time you're in combat. You don't have to make handouts. Are handouts cool and fun? Yes, for some players. For other players who are not savvy, who do not read books on secret messages, who don't watch videos like this on secret messages, they go, yeah, okay, it's a piece of paper. You as the GM have now spent hours working on your perfect water to lemon to milk ratio, and it's all been wasted. So there is that downside to creating actual handouts. The alternative, which is then strictly in the purview of role-playing with the theater of the mind, is to actually do roles for it. So you get given a secret message, make a logic check, make a decipher check, make a language check. Do whatever role it might be for your system to get the characters to read it. It takes a little bit of the mystery and a little bit of the drama and the romance away from secret messages, but it is, as far as rules as written concerned, probably the most accurate way of running secret messages in your game. I'm not a huge fan of this. I would rather use those roles to say, well, you reckon that maybe this might be an illuminated secret message. So if you illuminate it with the right thing, you'll see a message. At which point then the players have to figure out what is the right thing to illuminate it with. So it becomes a bit of a puzzle rather than a secret message. They then figure out, well, it was written by a drow, so it's probably not going to be illuminated by any natural light, or maybe it's the light of a fungus. Okay, we need the fungus, and then off they go and they try and get the fungus. So I would use the roles to encourage and develop narrative exploration by the PCs, rather than just to say, all right, well, you make the roll, you realize you have to smear it with the fungus of a deep cave mushroom, and then that will reveal the text. It does take the drama away. The alternative is ciphers. Now, ciphers are effectively, I, as the GM, have worked out my secret message. It's in code. I supply you, the player, with the code itself, and then with the encrypted message. The player has to then read through the cipher, read through the code, and apply it to my message and decode my message. These can be quite effective. They are time-consuming on your behalf in terms of figuring out how to do these different things, but at the same time, they are now a lot more hands-on, they're a lot more engaging, and they're a lot more of a direct input-output type of scenario, so that most players will get, oh, I have to replace this with that. Another option, which I actually didn't list here, but which I think works very, very well when you're talking about secret messages such as Thieves' Cant, and particularly when I was doing plant speak, I had a druid who spoke to plants. That was interpretive dance. And so the trees, I've spoken about this before on the channel, if the trees were happy in the sunlight, but sad in the rain, the bad men came and chopped us down and we were sad. You can do those kinds of things where the secret message is more about getting the players to interact, and if they wanted to speak back in Plant, they had to do their own interpretation. There was no cipher. There was no hard and fast rule of hands up for happy, hands down for sad, jaws for bad. There was nothing like that. It was just a way of getting us to move as we sat around the table. It was a secret language. The other players couldn't understand it. And after we'd spoken in Plant for a couple sessions, we had actually started to develop our own form of visual communication that both of us started to interpret. Nonetheless, secret messages can be a great thing to add to your game. They really add an air of mystery. There's something afoot here. And there is that benefit of, we know something that you don't know. We just have to figure it out. So however you play it out, whatever secret message or whatever system you're going to use for your secret messages, as long as it is entertaining, as long as it is adding to your gameplay rather than becoming a break on gameplay, causing everything to grind to a halt whilst people try and solve this thing, as long as it's trying to be as inclusive as possible of the entire party. If you're going to go with the roll system, make sure that different party members get to roll different checks to determine and decode this message. If you can do all of that, secret messages will bring an amazing, really entertaining opportunity for you as the game master to give some information to your players in a way that they don't normally get it. And they will probably remember that information for a lot longer than if you were to just simply say, oh, you get a secret message and the message says, go to here. That's my advice on secret messages. Agree with me or disagree with me? Let me know in the comments down below. Have you used secret messages before? Have you used some of the techniques? Are you a lemon juice writer aficionado? Or perhaps you prefer milk? Until next time, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming. Jonathan Lost here, again, Royal Cartographic Society. That secret note that we were looking at earlier, I don't suppose you have it with you. I mean, I think I've sort of lost it. I think I put it in a secret place, and, well, apparently it was even a secret place to me. So, do you remember what was written on it? I think I remember something about four fingers or toes or some such nonsense like that. Anyway, apparently that message was rather important. And so if you have it, I would very much like it back, so that we can see if we have to subscribe to something or not. You know, sometimes you get those monthly deals and things, and if you haven't got the bell sort of marked, you miss out on things, and we really don't want to do that here at the Cartographic Society. So if you have seen it, I would be awfully indebted if you could find it.